Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Hello and welcome to Program Insight in V News English. Dear viewers, there are massive protests ongoing in Iran. So, Western media is reporting different figures of casualties. United States is threatening Iran of a possible military action. Iranian government said today that it is ready for talks with the U.S. officials as well as it is ready for any possible war. So all options are open. Iranian government also said that channels of communication with the United States are open. And today there was another significant development in Iran that pro-government rallies and protests also took place. And these rallies expressed solidarity with the Iranian government. The Western media is also quoting huge casualty figure, but that could not be confirmed independently. Why it is happening and what are the reasons and what will be the implication of these protests to Iranian security policy, foreign policy, on its economy, on the region, and what options Pakistan has being a close neighboring brotherly country. What role Pakistan could possibly play, and then all other related developments issues. In today's conversation, we will discuss. We are fortunate to have with us very seasoned former diplomat, former foreign secretary, and chairman Sunover Institute, Mr. Ambassador Aizaz Chaudhry. Very warm welcome to program Insight in V News English.
Thank you very much, Mateen, Haider sir, for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you with us. As I said, then we will begin conversation with this, that since you have been watching the Iranian developments very closely, and Iranian story is currently a global story, all global media from east to the west, Western media, Middle Eastern media, everywhere it is being reported. How it erupted these protests. Initially, there are reports that these protests were initially were very peaceful. Then finally, these protests turned violent. So, what triggered these violent protests?
Well, as you know, the economic situation in Iran has been worsening because of US sanctions, and their currency has been depreciating quite actually steeply. And as a result, the inflation and allied discontentment had grown. People were unhappy. And this time, on 28th of December, it was the traders actually who came on the streets, closed their shops. Now, these traders have always been loyal to the revolution. If you recall, in 1979, the revolution was sponsored by, in many ways, by the traders. And this time they were very upset that they are not able to predict the policies because of the exchange rate fluctuating all the time. And therefore, they wanted government to act in certain manner. Now, it has also been seen that these protests have been going on for actually many decades. I remember that there were student protests from 1999 to 2003. Then there were some protests in 2007, another round called Green protests, I think Green protests or something in 2009 to 11. And then there were also 2017. And then finally, 3 years ago, what's that? Masa Amini led the protests. So this have been going on because of the economic situation. This time, however, the scale broadened much larger than in the past. And we also saw infusion of certain elements which made it violent. Now, Iran accuses that foreign elements intruded into the people who fired at authorities, who put fire to several mosques, were there essentially to provoke the situation. But now I hear the foreign minister of Iran saying that they have been able to overcome the unrest and that situation is returning to normalcy. We don't know because internet is closed, but if he's telling us the correct picture, then there should not be much to worry, except the threat of the US president to still strike somewhere in Iran,
Hmm.
because they have been wanting to find an excuse, and protests have come as an excuse. If the protests are actually continuing and we are not being told
Hmm.
the factual position, then it could lead to some kind of chaos,
Hmm.
because there is no clear leadership which is right there behind which all the protesters are rallying. So
Hmm.
situation is very, very foggy. It's not very clear exactly what is happening, but the role that the US is playing, and perhaps Israel behind the scenes are playing, are to fish in troubled waters, so that
Hmm.
they can somehow strike Iran in the way they want to cripple Iran.
Hmm.
And that, I think, seems to be the aim of the US president at this time.
Do you think, Ambassador Aizaz, have any difference between Iran and Venezuela? So both countries are oil producing countries. The way the US action was carried out in Venezuela and their president was captured, do you see the difference? Venezuela's story is different and Iranian situation is different?
Well, in certain respects, they are similar, but in certain respects, they are different. Let me explain. When it comes to violating the sovereignty and territorial integrity, I think that applies on both countries. The US has violated the sovereignty of Venezuela and wants to do the same in case of Iran.
Hmm.
You also see the same sort of China factor, which is also a common element, because Ukraine was selling oil to China, and
Hmm.
China is also a good friend of Iran. So
Very good.
US would like to block all kinds of oil exports to China, so that China's manufacturing machine is
Goes down.
hurt, or yeah,
Hmm.
goes down. So to that extent, it is similar. But this is very, very two very different situations. Venezuela is in the Western Hemisphere,
Hmm.
and Iran is in the Middle East. And Western Hemisphere is something that the US has always been very jealous about. Even in the national security strategy that was announced last month in December, it was
Hmm.
mentioned that US will be engaging more, directly in the Western Hemisphere. But at the global level, US will engage selectively. That means that in case of Middle East, say for Israel or against Iran, the Americans can act at a in a certain measured way. But when it comes to Western Hemisphere, and America and China and Russia making inroads into Western Hemisphere, is not acceptable to the US. It is not according to law.
Hmm.
International law provides space for every country to engage with every other country.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
as you know, these days in the world order has been sort of dismantled, or is dismantling, and international law is no longer being respected, and therefore the US has announced on its own a unilateral measure that Western Hemisphere is its priority area, and the rest of the world is not that high a priority. So that is a very big difference between these two situations.
So it might be threat only building up pressure on Iranian regime.
It could might be well be threat only, but
Hmm.
I think it will be more than a threat, Mateen Sahib. The
Hmm.
reason is that US and Israel have been looking for an opportunity
Hmm.
to attack Iran in one way or the other. They had already done some damage to their nuclear facilities, and
Hmm.
now they would probably want to focus on the Iran's missile capabilities, because it was the Iranian missiles which had responded to Israeli attack very effectively. And therefore, I think in the garb of helping the people of
Regime
Iran,
change. Hmm.
in the yeah in the on the pretext of that, they would want to do something for their own interests.
And that is the capturing Iranian missile program.
Not
So
capturing, but sort of damaging it. Yeah,
damaging, capturing, and ultimately damaging it. So,
yeah.
since you have served in Iran and on senior positions in the foreign ministry as a foreign secretary, since long you have been watching. So, Iran is a very important country in the region in West Asia. So, as the reports are suggesting that these violent protests are intensified, in case, as you also suggested, US and Israel definitely want regime change over there. They want to change definitely through different means, and they are engaged. What could be the possible implication of these ongoing protests to Iranian security policy, on foreign policy, and on their economy? And connected to this point, will Iran will be able to overcome this?
There are two scenarios. The first scenario is that Iran is able to overcome the present unrest
Mhm.
and will only have to deal with the military strike, cyber strike, or whatever the US and Israel decide to carry out. So
Mhm.
that is one scenario. In that case, I think the world will sympathize with Iran because
Mhm.
they have already overcome their internal unrest, and
Mhm.
they are now being violated against by outside powers. So the world will stand with Iran. The second is that if the protests are not overcome, and on top of it, some kind of military action happens from the US and Israeli side.
Mhm.
In that case, there could be utter chaos, Mateen Sahib. There could
Mhm.
be so much chaos, and that could affect all the neighbors of Iran and perhaps the oil markets and the economy of the world. So, therefore, that will not be a scenario that the world should really push the matters to. It would be better if the Iranian government is able to handle these in a peaceful manner, respond to the demands of the protesters, and not unnecessarily curb them, then life will become good for Iran because the world will like to help them. But if they continue to use force and they are not able to control those, then the world will stand with the people of Iran, because the world will say, oh, no further use of force should happen, and therefore, Iran could lose moral high ground if it continues to use force. I hope it is able to help its people hear their voice, address their concerns and grievances, and then move on.
You might have seen this latest American publication, the National Interest Report regarding Pakistan's diplomacy in the region, and specifically with regard to Iran. Just a couple of days before this report appeared, and that appreciated, loaded Pakistan's diplomacy on the Middle East, with focusing on Iran. That Pakistan is not in favor of regime change in Iran. And if there is a regime change, as you hinted, if there is a military action, that will push the country into the deeper crisis and there will be chaos. So, how you see Pakistan's diplomacy, number one? And number two, what are the options with Pakistan? Since Pakistan has been quite active in resolving solutions of different conflicts and issues since past when previous PMLN government, when the then Prime Minister traveled especially to Iran and to the other countries. So Pakistan is quite concerned. What options with Pakistan?
Well, Pakistan's foreign policy has received a big boost after May 2025 victory over India, and after that, Pakistan has seen that it carries a much bigger weight now in the
Hmm.
international community. But we have also seen that Pakistan has nearly always followed principled foreign policy. We have
Hmm.
never favored regime change from outside for any country.
Hmm.
Throughout the Arab Spring, Pakistan never favored any outside country and outside force to make regime changes. We don't allow that. We think that the people of every country should have that right to make the regime whatever they want to choose, but not regime change from outside. To that extent, I think Pakistan has become very, very clear that we don't want a regime change in Iran using outside force. But
Hmm.
if the people of Iran themselves make a certain choice They are naturally fully entitled to. So whatever happens, it should happen internally. It should not happen from outside. I think
External
that's a
forces,
policy which is,
exactly.
yeah, no external force should act. I think that's a policy Pakistan has always followed, and my sense is that this is the policy Pakistan will follow, here on.
I would like to seek your comment. U.S. President, in his recent interview, said that United States doesn't care about international law. So this is a very, very important statement from a mighty country of the world, and that statement have far-reaching implications on global security, as you have already hinted that this global peace or world order is in turmoil. So, how you see, as you have already commented from Venezuela to Iran, but on a larger canvas, the statement of the U.S. president that U.S. doesn't care about international law.
That's a very dangerous statement, to say the least, because after all, human beings have, through centuries of experience, reached this stage where they think that the entire international community should be governed by certain laws which are commonly agreed. And now since the United Nations was created in 1945, we have worked very hard to create a body of international laws. If you throw them away, then what is there? Then it is a free for all. And that is why what is happening is that all the countries in the US, in the world now, now know that they have to fend for themselves, that they have to depend on themselves. They also are looking for like-minded friends. For example, Pakistan had good friendship with China, with Turkey, with Saudi Arabia. So all these countries are making their, sort of not alliances, but informal alliances, because we have to protect ourselves. When international law is not there, how else should a country protect itself? The only way is that it has
Making
to boost
alliances, exactly.
defense and making alliances. Yeah.
So I would like to seek, there are many strategically important developments taking place. There was a recent report that Israel doesn't want presence of Pakistani troops under international stabilization force, and basically Israel has already opposed presence, although no decision has been made by Pakistan. But how you see this opposition by Israel? As I said, no decision has been made by Pakistan. Pakistan has already made it clear that it will not become part of any effort to disarm Hamas. So, why Israel is opposing the possible presence of Pakistani troops in Gaza? At a time, no decision has been made, but there have been a lot of reports.
Yeah, Israel believes that Pakistan will act in a manner which that is the perception Israel has, which will be not in favor of Israel. Naturally, Pakistan does not want Israeli defense forces to continue to rain all these bombs on the poor people, on the defenseless people of Gaza. But Pakistan had not made a decision yet. We did not want to be in a position where we are fighting the Hamas on the one level and the Israeli defense forces on the other. So while we were still thinking, Israel made that hint that Pakistan is not welcome. Good for Pakistan. I think it works well for Pakistan. We don't need to go there. As it is, our going there, if it was there only and only to have peace there, we don't want to go there to fight for anybody. We just want to maintain and keep peace. But if Israel doesn't want, I think it serves Pakistan perfectly well. We should simply say, okay, we are not coming. We will not play. We will play a role in other ways, like we did, but not by necessarily as part of the stabilization force.
Excellencies, a day before there was Organization of Islamic Conference Foreign Ministers extraordinary meeting in Jeddah, and that focused on Somaliland. And Israeli Foreign Minister has already visited Somaliland. So, what does this mean? Why Israel is in so hurry to recognize Somaliland? And does this mean that Israel wanted to have its strong footprints now in the heart of the Middle East and the horns of Africa? So, what could be the possible consequences of this recognition of Somaliland by Israel? although the Muslim world has strongly condemned, rejected, and expressed solidarity with Somalia.
I can only guess, Mateen Sahib, but I think there could be two levels. One is the global level, the other is regional level. At the global level, Israel believes that it has already subdued all its opposition. The Hamas and Hezbollah and Syrian regime and even Iranian regime, they think that they've already, Iranian government, I'm sorry, I use the word regime, Iranian government, because they think that they have already weakened the opposition. And many Arab countries have joined Abraham's Accord. They have already formally recognized. Israel has been talking of Greater Israel. So they believe that if they can somehow be situated on the mouth of the Red Sea, then they can control international shipping, or at least can have a say in the control of international. So that is the global reason.
And controlling Yemen, exactly.
Yeah, and controlling Yemen and all other countries. The local or regional reason could be that perhaps in Somaliland they will like to shift some of the Palestinians living in Gaza. They have US and Israel have been very keen to move the population of Palestinians to Arab lands initially. But since all Arab countries oppose that, I think they are now thinking of doing that in the Somaliland. And that is why all people in the Arab world, in the Muslim world, are very agitative, because they don't want Palestinians to suffer. They also don't want Israel to become a regional hegemon, a kind of policeman in that area. And therefore, there is all this opposition to Israelis' presence in Somaliland.
So on Greenland, United States is saying that all possible military options are there. So earlier it said that it could be taken with an agreement with Denmark. So how you see the threatening situation in Europe? Europe is in turmoil after the US announcement that it will definitely get the Greenland. So Denmark has strongly condemned this, that it will not allow any foreign force, even the United States, to get it forcefully. So how you see this Greenland issue and American military options?
Well, I think, again, this works at two levels. One is strategic or political level. The other is economic level. At the strategic level, the US believes that if it is present in Greenland, then it can create a defense shield against any missile attack coming from China and Russia. This is at one level, so for the defense of the US, and that's why they call it a national security issue. The second is economic, because they believe that Greenland is rich in rare earth metals and other minerals that the US needs for its own technological requirements. And so they would want to take over Greenland. But this could have serious implications, because Denmark, which owns Greenland, might say that that is the end of NATO. Then Denmark is a founder member of NATO, and they would say that an ally in NATO is attacking another ally within NATO. Naturally, NATO can do a thing. And there is Article 5, attack on one is an attack of other. So will all the Europeans stand by the Danish? Not sure, because I am not very sure how it will happen. So there is a lot of disconcert within the European ranks, within the Danish government. But the US seems quite keen, for its strategic reasons, for its economic reasons, to cut a deal with the local government in Greenland.
Excellency, you have already commented that Pakistan foreign policy got boost. No, I will not ask any question. And lastly, I would seek your comment, the global peace and security challenges in 2026. How you see the world in 2026, although the 2025 has been a turmoil year globally. But what is your prediction as far as global peace and security is concerned in 2026?
But in some, I see the turmoil increasing in 2026. continuing and growing in size. I believe the hotspots, all of them, whether it is Venezuela or Greenland or Iran
Mm.
or Israel or Ukraine, or to the east in South China Sea. So that I think these hotspots will be there, and they will fester. And that is why all those people who say that we need international law, because you can't deal with all these hotspots through use of
Mm.
force.
Exactly.
Use of force has its serious limits. But I don't see that push coming forward, except from China. Maybe China is saying that international law should be followed. But all these other major powers, they are just acting unilaterally. US, Russia, India, they've all acted unilaterally against their adversaries.
Thank you so much indeed, Ambassador Aizaz Chaudhry, former Foreign Secretary and Chairman, Independent Think Tank Cinnober Institute, for sharing your very
Thank you very much.
strategically and insightful thoughts on global developments, primarily on the situation in Iran. And dear viewers, till our next program, goodbye and Khuda Hafiz.